Hello everyone and welcome to a very special day after a brief break in the broadcast, at least on that side of things. We are back tonight with the UK Armed Forces ACC Championship, and we've got a pretty exciting track ahead of us, joining once again by Zabby. How are you feeling? It's good to be back in the box, isn't it?
Absolutely, really great. I mean, after a break previous week, it's great to be back in and to really have all the action from these drivers. And I must say that it was great in round one, so definitely going to be an awesome one out around here as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one for sure. Now, we have much to discuss before we go trackside with qualifying, but we do have the standings to consider as well. And Zabby, why don't you take us through at least our sort of top 10 drivers and the drivers to watch out for as we head tonight into Zolder?
Yeah, let's get it through, as we saw Tyron be a very strong contender, and in fact won round one as well. He currently leads the championship with 38 points to his name. Then it is Bury and Ranch in P2 and 3, with both of them being on exact 30 points, so that is going to be a nice battle for second place as well. Then comes King, who's our previous race winner in round 2 in P4 in the championship. Then it is Vernon Higgs in P5, just ahead of Leslie. Then it is Farrier in P7 with Worley in P8. Then it is Mack and Wilson completing out the top 10, both of them being on 4 points each as well. That's an interesting one to see, multiple drivers being on equal points.
Yeah, so certainly an interesting matchup as we look through the rest of the standings here as well. We've got everyone stacking up, 30 drivers joining us. One thing that was very curious to me, we had a bit of an RAF lockout. Now, we're 2 rounds deep, so it's still kind of early to tell, but we do have RAF personnel taking up positions 1 to 6 with British Army Esports in P7 with Farrier as a brief breakup. You do have a few different members of different sort of forces, so you've got Royal Navy in there, you've got a few civvy entries as well, but it's looking like a pretty interesting stack up as we look through the entire standings in full. 30 drivers deep, and quite a fun set of races that we have got ahead of us. But let's talk about tonight's race anyway. Tonight's race is going to be Zolder. Now, this is a very lukewarm track. It's either you love it or you hate it. And we're certainly going to find out which drivers fall on either side of the line. Now, Abby, you told me that this is actually your sort of first exposure to Zolder, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, and as you said, it's a lukewarm, saying that some love it and some hate it. And I'm sure, as you said, we are going to see where drivers fall out tonight, because if somebody loves it, they're going to be loving it and going through and flying around here. But if somebody doesn't, they really must be making some mistakes and really trying to get through this track and just get over it as soon as it gets. But it'll be really exciting, I'm sure, with the mix of chicanes and high-speed corners and all those heavy braking zones as well. Awesome one, definitely.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Now, key places to watch out for. You're going to be watching out for turns 2 and 3, because that's where the pit lane exits. You can see just on the bottom left corner, that sort of golf club shaped part of the course. That's a big hotspot for moments, because you have drivers emerging from the pit lane, coming into the inside of the course. So right on the apex of turn 3, really. You have to keep full awareness through that first sector. Then you have 2 chicanes as you head into sector 2. You have Kleiner and Villeneuve chicane, and the second sector of the course. Things do get a little bit calmer, but then you have a final chicane which enters into the pit lane, as well as the start-finish straight. So, should be pretty fun, should be pretty interesting. Now, we are going to be soon jumping into the session in full, and we should be getting ourselves on to the side of the track where we'll be able to really assess how the drivers do. We've got 20 drivers in appearance tonight. We've got some big names, of course, at the top end of the championship, but we also have some interesting absences, which we will go through in due time. This is also where we want to hear from you in the live chat, so whether you're watching us on Twitch or anywhere else, let us know who you're keeping your eyes on. If you've got a driver you're rooting for, if you've got a driver who you want to see will jump up those standings, let us know who you are rooting out there for. You've already seen a little bit of support in the live chat. I'm seeing support for Craig. I'm seeing support for Gibbs. Keep it coming, and we'll make sure that everyone gets their fair share in the spotlight. We've also got a few more liveries coming in. So back in round 1, we had a couple of hiccups with some of the paints, and now we are seeing a lot more styled cars coming onto the circuit. Some cars are still showing a bit of an error. They are still showing a bit of an issue at the moment, but teething pains. There's a little teething pains because the client that we're using is, I think, brand new to some. So we'll eventually get everyone on track, fully liveried up. But I like to see all the different designs. It's personally one of my favourite parts of doing a series like this, is just seeing how creative you can get with the car designs. I've seen everything from hardcore race liveries all the way to just some really weird and wacky designs that you can only really get away with in ACC.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these drivers, with the liveries, we get to see like some drivers not only being creative on track with their driving, but then creative with a bit of designing and designing their car, how it looks and how they like it, and also looks pleasing to the eyes as well. So definitely excited to see some newer ones as well.
At risk of sounding cliche, I think that your livery is in a way an extension of your personality. It does say something about you, whether that's something that you want to represent or just a way to style your car, make it feel individual, make it feel you. So again, we'll get a chance to highlight those designs out on track, but we are just confirming the set-off time for the course, and we are confirming when we are going to be getting going for the qualifying session. Looks like we are just getting our cue now. So let's go trackside now. Let's see what the drivers have in store for us as we are going to go in full onto the course. And we will be seeing already a couple of drivers making their way out. There's Vernon Higgs, going to be the first emergent car in the McLaren and in P5 in the standings. 24 points to their name. So they want to get a good result out of tonight. They've got a second place, and they will want to keep that streak going. Get those podiums in. Get yourself into potential podium spots. Only 6 points between themselves and P3 belonging to Wrench.
Yeah, only 6 points, and we get to see that not a lot, only 20 drivers attending tonight. I say only 20, we've got 30 in the championship, but 20 is a lot to correct myself. And I'm sure Vernon Higgs going to be trying to get the most of themselves tonight with, as you said, 5th in the championship. Trying to move up the order, 2nd place in round 1 it was, if I'm not mistaken, and I think it'll be an interesting one to see how it is going to be for them to be back again and drive tonight here in the qualifying session. Already out on it, and we're gonna see how the action is going to be tonight and how competitive it all will be. So he must be one of our drivers to start up a benchmark time as well.
Yeah, they're going to be the initial benchmark, and they're going to be the car to watch. Of course, we have got Tyrone, current championship leader, on track as well, so we'll see what they can do. We saw last time in round 1 anyway, they were a pretty strong runner when it comes to the qualifying sessions. But let's see what happens here. Into turn 1 here, this is Vernon Higgs. We're going to stick on board with as we go. Looks like a smooth transition through the different apexes. Key points here, you want to clip your apexes and get on the throttle as soon as you can on the exit of turn 3. You want to go sort of with a wide entry point. Careful of the gravel on turn 4, as you will lose a ton of speed, and that will affect you quite adversely. Even just a clipping of the gravel there in turn 4, that's going to be an easy 2 to 3 tenths. Bit bumpy over the Kleiner chicane. You can see there is the Aston Martin behind. That's the number 23 of James King, having a bit more difficult of a time. This really is the make or break section of the track, these 2 chicanes, because if you bump over them and you can't get that car settled, you're going to be in for a lot of trouble. Vernon Higgs, though, keeps it composed into the hairpin of the course, the peak hairpin, and then small, well, can we call it a chicane so much as it is a curve in the road? Technically a chicane, but I don't know. The jury is out on that one, but definitely a chicane here. Final one, as that's Jackie Ickbox. I'm going to completely butcher that name, and I do apologise, but across the line now, Vernon Higgs, benchmark time, cross the line here. And it will be a 29.802. Will we see any challenges for that time? James King with a 0.7. Tyrone coming up to the back of one of the McLarens. That is going to be... We're just trying to get a lock on the number. That's David Wrench. So he's currently in third place on the championship. They're both going to be pushing 110%. 131 from Ethan Lee. Tyrone with a 28.9. Absolutely eclipsing that initial run here. Monstrous opening time here from the Bentley.
Absolutely, as you saw Bentley of Tyrone previous in round one, Pep posting up very quick times as well, and that does seem to be repeating itself. He seems to be very quick around here already. Meanwhile, we see Craig Fitton currently just moving around as well. I wonder if they are going to complete their lap or start one, and as it sounds, they might be starting. But Tyrone again in that Bentley really to being as quick as they can. King then in second place, a previous round two winner, but surely Tyrone shows up there why he won in round one, and already the peak of his competitiveness is on at the board so far. I'm sure other drivers would be completing their laps and giving us more competitive times as well, but it'll be nice. What about Matt Steele then, as he just comes across that line? That is going to be him then starting a lap as well, as we are just getting their drivers, some of them completing their laps, but most of them starting their laps, as well as we have Welsh and Bury in P5 and 6 as well, just completing their flying laps. There is, we've got about over 20 minutes now remaining, and we're seeing Matt Steele going through right now. We're going to see how he's going to take this right-hander. Needs to be quite quick around it. He sure does do that, and he's got a chicane coming up ahead of him. It's still far away from him though, but let's see how good he's going to take it. That is going to be another make or break it corner as he goes through it very smooth, then just touches that little curb. In fact, stays away from the curb but takes it pretty smooth, and so far he seems to be going strong.
Into the second chicane now, nice and composed. Looks like that Ferrari really is playing nice here. The Ferrari is a good car to have around Zolder, to be honest. It is a well-balanced package. You're not going to be having too much trouble keeping that thing planted. The only issue is once you start to bounce, once you get at least one of those wheels airborne, it does struggle to recompose. It's very stable in the moment, but once you start losing control of that rotation, it can very quickly spiral out of control. Matt Steele, though, keeping a nice handle on that car, although saying that bit of an over-rotation there to finish, as they are down on their delta from the previous run. Invalid or not, 31.555. That's going to be enough for a P10 right now, and that just leaves 4 cars remaining on the course and yet to set a time here. Ethan Lee in P8, looking to get a bit of improvement, running about equal to their previous time, so it's going to be 10th at best. Single 10th could put them in 7th. It's going to be an improvement, but not enough to stamp onto that timing board. Meanwhile, Wrench, remember, P3 in the standings. A lot to prove here, a lot on their shoulders. Second up could put them, and does put them, into the podiums. That's a P3 right now from a difficult start, a bit of a rougher early run, to now sitting nice and comfy. Meanwhile, a couple more cars making their way through. This is going to be George now sweeping in to the final corners. 29.775, nicely done into P8. And the last couple of cars should be making their way through soon. It's going to be Mark Gladwell in the Lexus E20, but could push themselves up and gets into P12 on standings. Now, you mentioned earlier, Zabby, 30 competitors on the championship, but only 20 here on the track. I'm going to tell you now, this is what we were saying about Zolder being a love it or hate it track. It's a Marmite track, to be sure. And if you don't gel well with Zolder, it will certainly not gel well with you. So I think that is in part why we're not seeing as many drivers on course as we were hopefully expecting. Lynn Berry, though, Mercedes, and nicely rotated through in the number 87. Final couple of corners here, looking very swift. Half a second up. If they keep this up, they could get pole position. They're currently projected for a 0.3. Let's see what they can do here. It's all about that final corner. Very well composed up to the line. This could make it happen. Up to the line now, 2-7-0. New pole comes in, and it's the Mercedes-AMG of Glyn Berry. Excellent job. And Tyrone is not going to be taking kindly to that. They're back on track, and they've got a point to prove.
They surely have. They're going to be now really competitive and be a bit of pressure to really catch it back up on their time, and not only catch up but then improve as well, as we saw Bury just say up there that if you're going to do it, I'm going to go even better than you. And meanwhile, we see Davidson go even quicker than Tyrone as well. So Tyrone's now have to beat not one but two drivers at this point, as we are looking at John Welsh, and John Welsh and just have got their the final chicane to go in the Ferrari for them. They're just about 3/10 up on their time. They're improving on the exit of the final corner. How quick, and do they go any better than their previous time? They sure will, but only one position though. 129.292. Quite a big of an improvement, but still just puts them ahead of P8 and into P7 now. Position gain for John Welsh, as we saw Davidson in P2 and Bury in P1. What about Mack then? Mack currently in P20. No time set for them so far as it stands then, as they are currently down on their time, not improving so far. We'll see though. They're a 10th down so far. They're going to make a way around this part of the circuit, which is not much harder to navigate through, as they're just going to get into the right hander now. How good they'll be able to do though. They run a little bit wide, trying to take that curb on the outside, but will that be enough? They currently, as it stands, not improving at all. Over 7/10 down then at this moment. We'll see how good they'll be able to do, as they have just got the final sector to go now. How good is that going to be from Mack though? As he just comes across that line, currently P20, and that is going to put him P13, 130.7. No time on the board, and time good enough for P13 for Mack now.
Nicely done there from Mack. Last driver to set a time on the boards, and currently in good standing. The 30 is going to sort of net you lower middle pack. I think really the goal time for most of these drivers is going to be in the low 29s, because look at the likes of, for example, James King. He's in the Aston and he had a very good initial run. He hasn't really made good on that run since. However, that strong opener is enough for him to still hold on to P6 after all this time. So really, low 29s is going to be the benchmark and the target. We're 14 minutes left in the session. We're 10 minutes deep, and so far things are looking pretty spicy. Tyrone has been dethroned to P3 for now, as you have two major challenges. You have Peter Davidson, P19 in the standings, but P2 in the qualifying here at Zolder. I think we could see some of the talent come out here for sure in that McLaren, although Glyn Berry second in the championship and holds pole position. I think we're really going to see a fight between championship rivals really come to the fore. But Davidson, bit of a rough final chicane, wasn't quite able to keep those deltas honest, and it comes up to the line with a 0.540. So really was on target for an amazing lap. Still really good pace, but just not quite enough to get that pole, as they maybe once were on target for.
Yeah, they look like very fast in that middle sector. As you can see, that they've gone purple in there and improving on their previous time, but just didn't have enough on it at the end. Maybe that final chicane or just that final sector on the circuit got the better of them and just didn't have it enough for them to be improving. What about Bradley Gibbs then, currently in P10, but improving on their time over 4/10s. They've got the final chicane to go. They're going to try and come back out on the circuit and go back on the power as quick as they can, as they've just got the final line to go now. They go across that line, do improve and move up to P8. Still didn't find any improvement in that middle sector. Maybe over 4/10 still, but just that middle sector got the better of them. But still a good position for them to go into P8. now, and still just moving towards the low 129s, 129.5 for them. Meanwhile, Tyron is on a lap and just getting started. Could it improve? We'll see. How good can they do now, though? Can they do it this time around? And a chance for them to move up back into the top, and pole positions is going to be on, and they run wide. They run very, very wide, and the lap is going to be done for Tyron, and straight into the pits for Tyron there.
I don't think the Bentley is very happy with this track. I think it is the Bentley, right? The Bentley is a car that likes to be planted. It, despite having plenty of weight reduction in its GT3 form, it's still a bit of a boat. And it wants to be planted and on the ground, and it wants to feel stable. It can really take some serious momentum. But the minute it gets unsettled, it scrubs speed, it understeers. You've got to keep that car under control. So I know for a fact that the Bentley is certainly, I don't want to say weaker cars, because we don't really have so much as weaker cars. We do have the balance of performance, of course, kicking in. But it's not a car that looks upon Zolder favourably, and it certainly takes a bit more effort to extract the maximum performance compared to if you were running a different chassis. We were saying about the Ferrari earlier, very balanced and sort of very good choice around this track. The McLaren is also a good pick. In general, just a very good all-rounder with some nice top end to boot. If you've got the Mustang, very good on that acceleration as well. Every car has its own characteristics and strengths, and despite any sort of balance of performance work that you can do, they're naturally going to have favourable and less favourable tracks. And I think Taro might be seeing that a little bit here, because he's seemingly struggling to put that time down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's also the case of that the car and the Bentley as well, that if you get it perfect, it's going to be there for you, but even the slightest of mistakes is going to punish you a little bit and not be there for you, and definitely that is visible. And also, as you said, the Ferrari and the McLarens being the better cars in terms of balance and easier to drive for drivers, as we see David Ranch run very wide there, and definitely the Bentley, not a lot of drivers picking up, as we said, a few drivers, or in fact most of the drivers on track have either the McLaren or the Ferrari. Only one Bentley, and that is Tyron that we see him in, and that'll be interesting to see how good can they do this time around, though. What about James King then in that Aston Martin? Currently not improving, over 6 tenths down. Just got the final chicane to go, though. But are we going to see them put a time and get better than their previous time, at least, or the previous lap that they've done? 129.462. How good is this one? Not improving at all. And what about Ryan Worley then? He's got the final chicane to go as well, and they are improving. He's currently in P13, finding the improvement by over 4 tenths though. But can he do it this time around? He's going to get it through, and the improvement is going to be enough to push him to the top 10 and into P10 for Ryan Worley now.
Very nicely done indeed. And this is that middle phase of the qualifying where everyone is now just trying to extract the small gains that they can. You can see deltas are across the board, creeping up and down. The main thing here is for the racers, it's not so much a fight for absolute peak pace. It's about having your baseline, knowing where you can and can't push, and slowly chipping away at that time. Like we just see Simon Kelly, we're on board with now the second Bentley on the field, in fact, so this is going to prove to be another benchmark. They really struggled on that last chicane, so was on the target for an entire half second, which would have put them past Mark Gladwell. Sadly, didn't quite come to pass, but we have Luke Cleland and into P14 with a 113, or 113? Wow, that would have been amazing. But 131.142. I really got to learn how to read at some point. Turns out it's kind of useful at times. Vernon Higgs, next car on the course, and was another strong contender to watch out for. They've got plenty of chances to get this right, although no, a little bit too much in the chicane, just bowing out of the lap. Not quite to be this time. Ryan Worley, again, time improvement, but this is going to be something we're starting to see more and more. They've improved on time, but they've not improved on position. the margins are getting finer and finer. And like we said, a low 29 is the time to beat, because a 29.292 is the time of John Welsh, who's been very firm and very calm in that P7 thus far. Time is of the essence, though. Tyrone coming through the second to last chicane, if we want to be picky. And final chicane now could be on the cards for a new fastest. Let's see just how they're able to power out of this corner. Very composed, keeping it out the grass. Was briefly flashing purple up to the line here, and it's a .447, so up into second position with Glyn Berry into a potential new fastest lap. We see they're flashing purple. We're getting teased into the final hairpin. A little bit of a slow approach here. Can they carry that momentum up? Oh, not looking too hot. They have dropped time in second sector, heading into sector 3 now. Will they be able to make this up in the final couple of corners? Sadly not. Just not able to get that power through. Or are they? Brief hiccup on the timing board. It's a .722 in the end. They remain in pole position, but no major improvement. Second sector was their fastest, but sector 3 is where it unfortunately fell away.
Yeah, again, I mean, we get and see, even for a fastest driver, the final sector just being a bit tricky one. The middle and the first section, not that much, pretty much, as they could find an improvement, but the final sectors not being too good for them. What about Matt Farrier here? He's improving by quite a lot, over 6/10 now, but the final chicane has been very tricky for most of the drivers, and we've seen drivers either gain or lose time around here, and they're going to get touched. Do they get out of the way or get touched by the car behind? That is going to be them having to back out of the way, then. That was very late, and it could have been way worse than it was. That was quite close.
Yeah, there is still other traffic to consider on the course, regardless of if you're on a hot lap or not. You've got to deal with the hand you're given, and in the case of the BMW we were just on board with, that did not really come to fruition. So coming on board with now Bradley Gibbs in the Porsche and in P8, sweeping his way around the final chicanes, and currently sitting firm with a 29.525. No improvements here, and we're seeing most drivers run red in terms of Delta. We've got Ethan Lee making his way through the second major chicane of the course and into the next sector. Final sector now.
We could see drivers getting in maybe at the back, but as I was about to say, many drivers might not improve at the top. We are just seeing the top 4 drivers going a little bit up on their previous times. What about Matt Lee then? Still staying at P11 so far as it stands. Currently just finding a little improvement then, getting a little better than their previous time as it stands, going to turn 1. But is that going to be enough? Turn 1, let alone being a little bit of a chicane as well. But what about Lee then? Apologies, that was not turn 1, that was a final chicane. Then it was just a bit of a hiccup from me, but does improve a little bit. Still P10 into the top 10. And the final moments, the final lap times from the drivers are just coming up now.
Yep, last chances for the field, as now it's going to be that crucial final phase. You're going to have about 2 major laps left here on Zolder. If you are on course at this point, you need to get that sort of game face on. It's time to see what you can really do, as you're going to have a out lap, of course, and then it's last shots. Oh, that's going to be a swing and a slide. That is Stevie Mack, number 19 McLaren. That's what can happen. It can very easily happen on that chicane, but you just bounce the rear axle, you get a bit of the equivalent of lift-off oversteer, and you are almost a passenger at that point. There's nothing that you can really do. We see another car that has fallen prey to it. I think that is Farrier, that right there. But everyone is potential victim of the chicanes here at Zolder. Nobody is truly immune. Some cars more susceptible to that spin than others. Like, you can take a bit more curb with certain cars. I think the Porsche is another good pick for this course, because you generally tend to run that with a little bit more acceptable rear slip. Because of its weight distribution, you can afford to take the rear axle a bit further round before it hits that point of no return. So Porsche is a sort of good rear stable option. Tyrone coming through in the Bentley. A little bit of a slide on the exit at the final corner, though. That is going to put a damper on what was a good run, and it is going to be a 10th down on their previous. They're running out of chances here if they want to get this pole. They've got to go for it now.
Yeah, they really had to, and I'm sure they might get another lap in, but I think this could have been a very good lap and a very good option for them to improve. It just was not enough in the end, as we see on the time. They are improving. But what about George then in the BMW, which if I'm not mistaken, he was the one who bumped into the rear end of Lee, ruining their lap. But as it stands, George is improving their lap, and in P9 so far, improving over 2/10, as they're just going to make their way to this through this chicane, and just a few corners away from the right-hander in the last part of this circuit, and just our way to the final chicane. Just before that, this little right-hander, the hairpin, is a very crucial one to get as well. And then this little mini chicane, as we call it around here. George has got the time to improve so far. 2/10 on it, though, but the final chicane has always been the make or break it for these drivers. How good is it going to be for George, though? Just on the exit of it, try and get back on the power. And in fact, it is looking to be a very good one for him. He gains a 10th around there and moves up into P6, and an improvement for George. 129.0 just puts them into the top 6 there.
Very nice. And final shots here for everyone on the field. You can see some drivers who have already dipped into the pit lane. They've decided that their final laps are not meant to be. This is going to be enough for them now. You can see Glyn, Tyrone both in the pits, meaning that they are going to be short of any major upsets, locked in first and third. We have Peter Davidson, who is out on the track right now. So we'll see, is there anything to be gained from him? This is going to be the start of his lap here with 20 seconds to go. So one to watch as more and more drivers are going to be peeling into the pits. David Wrench into the pit lane, leaving just a few remainders. There's going to be Ethan Lee briefly taking an excursion off the side of the track. Most of the cars have now retired in, so not going to be many chances left to see the racers out in action. And Lee coming up into the pit lane. Enough is enough. Stevie Mack is going to be crossing through that final hairpin and into the third sector here. Any time to be gained. We'll have to wait and see. A little bit of a wobble on the final couple of corners, sliding out wide to the exit there. Qualifying has officially ended. Stevie Mack is going to be one of the last to come across. It is going to be a last minute improvement, however, into P12, and there you go, there you have it. That is time for our racers. Nicely done indeed. And see, immediately we are going to be getting trackside. No time to be wasted, and might as well keep the momentum going here. I'll take you on a little bit of a momentary track walk. So let's see who is going to be out in front. First things first, Glyn Berry, one of the fastest drivers out here today, and is going to be our first position holder coming out of qualifying. Davidson in second in the number 72 McLaren with the number 69 Bentley of Tyrone. Vernon Higgs in fourth in the 50 McLaren with number 1 of David Wrench in P5. George in the 98 BMW is going to be in P6 with James King, 23 Aston, and John Welsh in the number 41 Ferrari taking row 4. Rounding out your top 10 is going to be the 86 of Bradley Gibbs and Ethan Lee in the number 63 BMW. Last minute to go before track is hot, and then Ryan Worley is in P11 with Stevie Mack making a last minute surge up to P12 in the dying moments of quali 19. 13 is going to be the number 13. It's going to be Craig Lewer in the Ferrari with Luke Cleland in the Ferrari as well. The number 31, P14. Last few cars now. George Powsland, Matt Steele, Mark Gladwell, Matt Farrier, Craig Fitton, and Simon Kelly round off your order of 20 drivers. And we will be getting things up and started in just a moment. I'm pretty excited for this, I can't lie.
Absolutely. I mean, really excited to see these guys go wheel to wheel and really side by side action, which you saw back in round one. But already just got 5 seconds to go, and as you said, no break after the qualifying session, and straight away we're getting trackside and get going for this race.
Let's see what these drivers can do. Remember, it is going to be a pretty exciting race here. Zolder has never failed to disappoint. It has always been a track that, in my opinion, for as much as it gets its share of hate as well as love, it always produces some intense moments. It's always been a track that I have, granted only from the sidelines, but have absolutely adored.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw drivers, you know, I'm sure we could get the sense of them racing speed and side by side, but also that drivers making mistakes as well, which was visible in qualifying as well. So I'm sure maybe not too many, but at least a few of them could be visible in the race as well. So that could spice things around for one another. Maybe if you're running behind a car and thinking that you can't get past them, they could make a little slight of mistakes. It could be you through into that position, or either it could be you then on the other end making a mistake, losing out as well. So it'll be interesting to get on 1 hour of great racing around Zolder. Very excited for it.
Yeah, it was looking nice and beautiful. I'd say just as warm as it is in real life. I'd say I had to crank my windows today, so currently 26 degrees in the room that I'm broadcasting in right now. But it's going to be well worth it if we're getting trackside for this. So nice and sunny out in Zolder, 21 degree track surface temp, 18 degrees ambient. So that is really going to be the perfect balance of tyre temperatures, tyre grip, as well as keeping those cars cool with enough air flowing by. See how they do as everyone is on their formation lap. 60 minutes on the clock. And of course, goes without saying, but good luck to all the racers who are going to be out on track tonight. You can see Glyn trying to get as much heat into those tyres as soon as physically possible, because you want to be in optimum condition right out the gate. And considering he has an advantage over Tyrone right now, he doesn't want to waste it.
Absolutely not at all. He wants to get that a car between the two. He's going to take it with both hands and really do his all and get us through as they're just now making their way into the final chicane and get to the start line as quickly as it comes. It can't come soon enough for Glyn there to try and get ahead. Meanwhile, Davidson's going to try and take his chance as well around the outside as they're going to get single filed maybe at the start. It is going to be double filed though, but it is going to be Glenn Burry ahead of everyone as we are just coming around the line now and getting started. They're just going super slow before they could get to the line and get ourselves and green flags racing, and it is green already. We're going to see drivers now racing up into turn one. It's going to be a nice one. Meanwhile, Tyrant already through, and Davidson into turn one. He's going to go down the inside line there. Almost had him, but Davidson just has it enough, and it's going to be through. Meanwhile, there we see Jordan and all the other drivers start racing as well, just to switch up of positions. They're all through now, and there's already an incident, and the Bentley at the back is spun off along with another car.
That is going to be the number 77. That's Craig Fitton taking a bit of a casualty with Simon Kelly now down into P19. We'll get a replay of that in a moment, but of course we've got to keep our eyes trained firmly to the front. Looks like Glyn's got that early advantage. He's going to press it as hard as he can heading into this first couple of laps. These openers are absolutely everything, especially at Zolder. You need to get that early dominance. You need to establish your position on that track stat. Davidson is going to be in second with Tyrone currently holding on to third, refusing to yield an inch as we go into these next treacherous sections. He did go for a bit of a send on Davidson into turn one, just poke the nose in. I think that was more of a dummy throw than it was an actual attempt at a move, because at this stage you're not really going to be getting any attacks unless anyone makes a major mistake. Establishing the pressure, playing the mind games, that's what's going to win you in the long run. But Fitton in the pits, meaning that we are going to effectively have 19 cars on track unless he re-emerges, but that is going to be Glyn. Glyn is down, and he has got himself all the way down the order. just as quickly as he held the advantage, he lost it. He's down into P16. Let's take a quick replay. You see exactly what happens there with the number 87. This is going to be from the helicopter shot now. Again, a bit of a rewind. So this was previously where he was out ahead of the rest of the field. Looks like he had a bit of a knock-on effect. Oh no, that was contact there. I see. Oh, Tyrone is. All three of them were going to get caught up on it. So Tyrone is actually now down in P6 here, with Davidson down in P9. The three in the lead have now been completely 180'd. Tyrone is actually leading from those initial threes. And that is going to be Glyn all the way down to the bottom of the order. Brutal opener for them.
Really brutal. I mean, unlucky, really unlucky Davidson. I'm sure he wanted to be late on the brakes and maybe try a different line than Glyn was, but just going to the back of him is never going to be a good thing for them. It could be penalties maybe coming up for them, and Glyn then of course very unlucky for him, I'd say, and a horrible mistake from Davidson, you could say, making that going to the back of Glyn there. And then now Glyn's just ahead of Matt Ferrier in P14 as the top drivers currently. Vernon Higgs, Wrench and BL George leading up to the top three, with King in P4 as it stands. They definitely took it with both hands, the top three. I mean, as soon as they saw the start top three get out of the way, they're at it already. As we're going to see moves into turn one, and there is going to be Stevie Mack, and going into another car. There was two McLarens colliding, and it is Mack now falling back. He sent it almost like Davidson. He was side by side though, while Davidson was far away. Who poked his nose in. This was, and that is now going to be Mack going at the back and at the complete back of the grid from his own mistake. They're just maybe not judging the braking zone and making contacts, ruining theirs and the other driver's race as well. Probably the other one got away with that, but Mack is probably going to be having to do a lot of work to get back and recover to the field.
Yeah, and as things start to stabilize for a good chunk of the field, it's going to be a big question mark for some racers. We are officially down to 19 now. That is going to be fitting out of the order, as say Bradley Gibbs is going to be taking a major off, and it looks like the chaos has continued, as that is Lua and Steele. Going to get a bit of a rewind on that just quickly, see exactly what happened. So you can see there was the replay of Gibbs there, but switching to the helicopter, it's going to be into the chicane now. So just drop in the rear, and there you go. That's what we were saying about the chicane. But oh, what is that rejoin? That is the kicker right there. Unsafe rejoin, I think, there from Steele. Oh, sorry, Lua. That is... Actually, so that's they're very similar color schemes. Do apologize for mixing the two up, but unsafe rejoin from the Ferrari that went off track initially is going to be the major issue for me personally. I think that is certainly going to be a question mark.
That surely will be. I mean, as we said at the start, that mistakes could be coming in for a lot of drivers, and we are seeing that already. Some colliding with each other, or a few of most of them going off on their own. Meanwhile, Tyron and currently stands in P5, just behind the Aston Martin of King at the moment. Tyron and the Bentley going smooth so far, with the cars behind. Running a little wide was Lee at the chicane, just taking it through smoothly now, but definitely the mistakes kicking in, and already, as we saw, as we just said, the race was stabilizing for most of the drivers. It was getting chaotic as well. Meanwhile, these three are at the top, and just behind the top three are King and Tyron. Meanwhile, the BMW of George is ahead of both of them, but Tyron could be on the way for an overtake. Maybe he has to back out. Maybe he plays the patience game so far, as we see the pit window now opening up as well. You don't expect drivers to pit this early, but still, very soon there could be some cars in the pit lane as well.
Yeah, so see, the pit window being open does mean that if the drivers need to, they can jump in, and we'll hopefully see that coming to the... Well, coming to the jurisdiction of the teams and the drivers. The racers will course, have a lot of flexibility in how they want to play this out. The main thing for us right here. Oh, we do see Simon Kelly taking a bit of an off, bit of a wide run. Will he get that car under control? Looks like he just avoids disaster. Craig Lewer on the back of him here. But yeah, so the teams do have a bit of flexibility. We can see that is James King getting up ahead of the BMW, trying to switch it back through the second chicane. Tyrone is going to be waiting in the back line. And I actually wanted to sort of give a bit of credit as Bury is going to be in P10. So he's actually made up most of his initial deficit and is making his way back to the single-digit positions. He's got a bit of work to do still, but it's a good sign to make up this time with not even 10 minutes elapsed in the race.
Not at all. He's really on the recovery, and let me tell you what, meanwhile, George is under pressure from Tyrone, and Tyrone is on his way to almost overtake, almost sent it there on the inside line. Just had to back out in time to not create another chaos, but into turn one, it could be a nice one there as the chicane wasn't the one for Tyrone to make the move, as turn one wouldn't be as well, but I'm sure as the BMW of George has gotten overtaken by King, and it is almost going to be Tyrone once again going for that move, but just enough in time. George was going to be there on the defensive line, but this time around sends it in there to Tyrone. They're going to be side by side, and Tyrone has sent it on the inside line though, and he's going to make the move and get himself into P4, but he's going to come back at him. George is going to come back at him. They're still going to be side by side. The move isn't done yet, and George is not going to back out quite easily. He's going to have the outside line, might go late and on the brakes and take the chicane ahead of Tyrone, but Tyrone now on the exit once again. He's going to come back at him, and this is going to be really close again. Nobody's backing out. No one wants to give up on that position. They're again heading up into another chicane, and it is going to be George to won that position into P4, but they have another car of Lee now at the back as well, arriving at the scene. Meanwhile, Luke Leyland has went off and has had an incident, as now these three are going to be there, and the BMW of George is going to be in big pressure.
Yeah, big pressure being levied on George right now. Tyrone is very keen to get up ahead of him. You can see him sweep to the right, then to the left, then to the right again. It's just trying to psych him out almost at the same time as pressuring him for position. Needs to get in a position where he can get past and make sure you're able to hold the move should he go alongside. That's the difficult part here with Zolder. It's one thing to have the pace on your opponent, but it's another thing entirely to get past. Brief contacts between himself and the BMW there. Tyrone going very wide to the outside, going into the marbles on the rubbers. And you'll see he's trying to keep that thing gripped up. But look, there's Ethan Lee as well, getting himself involved. He's going to make this a try battle right now, as he's going to be waiting like a vulture to see what these two do. He can pick up the scraps and then hunt down the remaining position. Smart plays here from Ethan. Let's see what he does on the onboard. Smoothly driven through the chicane, over the crest into chicane number 2. Into Villeneuve. You can see Tyrone has managed to get up ahead, but George is not taking that one lightly. In fact, he cuts the chicane. Not taking the ideal line there. He's going to completely cut it to try and keep proximity as well. You see Ethan had to take a bit of evasive action. He's dropped off the back here. Wonder if it's going to be a continued challenge. But then at the bottom of the field as well, squabbles continue. Cleland and Gibbs both having a bit of a wobble. Cleland's now all the way to the back, as even Gladwell's going to get past. I think there is a bit of an issue with the car. There's going to be Kelly and Gibbs really coming to blows. In fact, that is going to be Gibbs completely off the track, as Kelly is certainly making their presence felt in P14.
Absolutely, and as we see a track being a little bit narrower, it just doesn't seem to be going 2-1 quite smooth in most of the corners. But this time around, Kelly's going to lose out that position, as it's going to. Oh, in fact, he's not going to lose out. They're going to gain that position in that Bentley and ahead of the car there, as they're going to go wide. They're going to go very wide into the chicane, and that is going to be problems, and definitely position lost for Kelly in the Bentley there. Meanwhile, Gibbs is going to be through with Liver in P14, as the cars behind now are going to be on the attack to the Bentley as well. Meanwhile, down the inside line there, George sent it into the chicane, but I think that was more of a desperate move then a move that was there to be made. Sure, there were only 2 cars there. Meanwhile, Ethan Lee is going to be there now, overtaken by Davidson as well. Davidson, remember, one of the top drivers, now having to recover back as well. As you see, Glynn in P10 as well. He's now catching up to the drivers at the top as well. The recovery for him is on, along with Lee there doing the job to be making those moves, but a little desperate move from George we saw there. Meanwhile, Tyron moves away and ahead of everyone there, pulling away from these bunch of cars. What about John Welsh then? He's going to just stay behind and not really do the desperate thing we saw George do, maybe, as he's going to run wide. He's going to run very wide and have a spin on his own. He's going to just come back on track. Nobody's behind him, so the rejoin was safe, but that a spin, and John has lost it on his own, and we're going to see Glynn now go on the inside line of the Ferrari there, as Worley's just going to be able to defend it and keep it to himself, and the P9 still belongs to him. Meanwhile, Glynn, it says in P9 though, okay, so maybe the fight was for P10, but what about this fight though? Gibbs and Liver are there though. Gibbs is just going to take it. They ran wide and in fact been in the gravel as well, but Gibbs, as it stands, could be on the way to lose out that position in turn 1, and it will be Liver taking that P14 once again.
Yeah, a little bit of back and forth. I will say some drivers are potentially taking the meaning of fighting side by side a little too literally. I think they are certainly trying to emulate that almost pugilist style. You really want to get your elbows out, but not to this degree. I think you made it a good point earlier that a couple of drivers are kind of throwing moves into these chicanes that aren't necessarily sticking, basically putting the others in a position where it's either move or go off track. And that's not necessarily the way you want to handle it, but we'll of course see. I think that's just as much a product of the track as it is maybe of the drivers. As you can see, oh, Glynn is going to have a bit of an altercation. That's John Welsh coming in much hotter than the Mercedes. Ends in disaster for the both of them losing masses of time, as Welsh is going to be currently sat in P9, and looks like Worley is going to be the target for time, currently much further away as a result of these two coming to blows, and Bury having not one but 2 altercations off track. Now about 10 seconds gap, or teetering on 10 seconds for a moment there.
Yeah, almost. And as we said, I mean, as you said, maybe as you said, into the chicanes, drivers, of course, we saw making some of those moves that shouldn't be made, and maybe to the drivers going elbows out, but this track not being way wider for it to allow as well. But I'm sure as drivers should know their limits and limit of the track as well, as we are currently seeing Mac in P11. He sent a huge dive bomb into turn 1 on that same car of Powerland, if I'm not mistaken, and on that same livery McLaren, but he's ahead of that McLaren at the moment. What about Davidson, currently in P6, now to fight out Lee and defend out his position from that BMW in that amazing black livery. But we're going to see, is Davidson going to be able to defend it so far though? So far as it stands, he will be, as they make their way through the hairpin and into the final chicane now. He's far away, not close enough, Lee, to make that move, unless he goes for a huge dive bomb though, as it stands into the final chicane. Gets closer to the McLaren, but still not enough, and not close enough for them to be making the move. Meanwhile, they are both now closing up to George into P5, in the P5 position, where George has kept it for himself. Might be in problem, might be in danger.
Yeah, it's going to be
get overtaken by driver. Yeah, absolutely.
See what they do, but we are currently 15 minutes into the race distance, and so far things are shaping up pretty interestingly. You got David Wrench currently sat in the lead of the race. He's sort of benefited early from the chaos initially that played out between the top 3 drivers, and he currently sits nice and comfortable here with a 3-second lead to second position, which is Bailey Vernon Higgs. Strong driver, consistent throughout, and has currently held their own. And these two are 3rd and 5th in championship respectively, so a lot to be gained from jumping on the others. You've also got James King, currently 3rd place and then 4th in the championship, so another strong driver to be watching out for. Tyrone, though, has been making a bit of a recovery and has tried to close that gap Currently 5 seconds away from the Aston Martin we were just on board with. Though time will be the great benefactor here, as we do see Welsh dropping to Stevie Mack following a bit of an off-track moment. Also see if Simon Kelly is going to be on the defense here, as there will be some squabbling back and forth. Simultaneously, he's got 2 fights on his hand. You've got Pausland ahead and Steele on the back. Too much aggression. He's going to leave himself open to the Ferrari, but too defensive, and he's never going to get the chance. He goes for it on the hairpin. It really pocks that car on the apex. He gets those elbows right out, and Steele is now going to be all the way in the mix. Pausland is going to recover quickly and is going to minimize the damage to only 1 position here. I don't think he's going to be happy with that. Welsh is going to be one of our first drivers, meanwhile, into the pit lane. So he's going to take that stop nice and early, potentially try to break himself out from the rest of the field and just save himself a bit of chaos, because it looks like up and down the field there is plenty of action. Good and bad for some, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, it really is, as you said, good and bad for some of the drivers. Meanwhile, we saw a very good, I'd say, a huge dive bomb from that Bentley at the back. We saw them making the move, and once again we are at the top with Ethan, Davidson and George. Meanwhile, Davidson seems to be quite closer to George than Lee is, and looking at from this bumper cam, it is George's rear wing now. We're going to see Davidson be closer to them, as we have one driver into the pits pulling that trigger on the pit stops. We'll see how the others are going to be in there as well, as we just have a little over 41 minutes remaining in this race so far, and we're just over 35 minutes of this pit window as well, so they've got quite a plenty of time to be thinking about the pit stop and making the strategy work right for themselves as well.
Yeah, so George, I think P6 in the standings right now, so has got a bit of a chance here again to make some jumps on the field and really get a bit of a advantage. I'll say I like to talk about winners and losers. I know it's too early to call. We're only 20 minutes in. Looks like there has been a major incident. However, there's 3 cars rotated, 4 cars all getting involved in a major scrap. Let's see exactly what happened. This is going to be from the helicopter. So we can see Simon Kelly, and then on to the back of that. I think that is going to be the Ferrari of, I want to say, Matt Steele, but as he comes up to the back, oh, bit of a contact there. There's going to be the Porsche getting caught in the crossfire. You also had Gladwell, who lost out major time, and we jump back to real time. Kelly is off into the gravel. So see, Gladwell has actually come out a bit stronger from this. He's come out to P14, and despite some of the anarchy happening around him, he's actually made it out somewhat okay.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, we're still seeing, drivers maybe not to a big extent of losing a lot of positions like we saw the top drivers, Glenn, Davidson, and Tyron do at the start. Drivers are still picking in, maybe making mistakes, running wide, still losing out a bit of time, but not a lot of positions. Losing by most of the drivers, maybe most of it because the gaps are quite a lot on track, and not many closer cars or battles are around each other, so that one makes a mistake, the other takes it on. Meanwhile, Glenn still in P8, almost looking out maybe somewhat a top 10 finish would Glenn be looking for themselves, and after that incident really at the start of the race.
Yeah, just trying to find if Kelly has placed on the championship previously. I can't find anything in the positions, so I think they are a fresh entrant for this round, at least from the data that I have to hand. You can see there's going to be Ryan Worley taking a bit of an excursion off the track into the grass and going to be sacrificing position to Glyn, who is now in P7. This Mercedes has really had a roller coaster of a race. Starts P1, goes to P16, gets to P10, has another issue, and is completely down in the doldrums. But up into P7 now, 14 seconds to gain before they can get to the next closest car. But still, it's a major set of achievements to recover twice, basically, from incidents, whether out of your control or not. it really does show the pace that he has on tap as a driver.
Yes, he really has. I mean, sure, he's recovered. We're going to say he might be happy about that recovery, but on the other end, he might be pissed off a little that he could have possibly won today had that incident's not happened. But I'm sure he'll get it there, and the speed is going to be there. And once we have the pit stops done and the strategies being done by these drivers, the interesting thing will be on as then they would be all be on for the pushing to the end of the race. And to see where they can do and what they can really do. Meanwhile, George still holds off Lee, and the P5 top 5 still belongs to George as it stands. P5 position. That BMW driver, we saw some dive bombs here and there, but Lee staying patient, not really giving it back at the moment, just staying back in P6. And as it stands, we're into P11 then, maybe gaining a few positions with some of the drivers heading into the pit lane and pitting up for their pit stop.
Yep, so we are actually now down to 18 drivers. That's another curious point. You have lost a second driver throughout the course of all of this, and it is a shame when we do lose drivers like these sort of situations. However, it will be, of course, a... Well, it's tough to really say. Like, sometimes you do genuinely need to quit out. Things happen, life happens. Sometimes you know that you can't drive the race that you want to, so it's better to cut your losses. But we always want to see, of course, as many drivers finish as humanly possible. So we'll see that stabilise potentially, and we will see the racers now make their way through to the end. We're coming up to the halfway mark here, and one thing that has been made abundantly clear is that as we have a turning point in the race order, everyone has started to split themselves out around the track. It's no longer so much about battles as it is just running in clean air and gaining, or losing for some, time. Time is your greatest weapon, but also your greatest enemy on this course. You can see blue flags even starting to be deployed in certain places. We did have a couple of stop and goes that were cleared as well throughout the course of this. So we had John Welsh, who went to clear a stop and go penalty. We have Craig Lure getting a genuine pit stop under his belt, along with Powsland and Cleland going just a bit earlier. So their pit stops are done, and it looks like they're going to be seeing that through till the end. That's going to be Tyrone into the pits, along with the other Bentley of Simon Kelly. Both Bentleys now heading in roughly the same time. See how that affects the order when we come out the other side.
We'll get to see as what they can do for these pit stops, but then these drivers to be coming up as well. We'll see how good can they do. What about Bailey at this moment in P2 so far as it stands? I don't think they've pitted, but along with Ranch as well, who's in P1 at the moment with the fastest lap to themselves as well as it stands. We are there. Then we are looking at Vernon Hicks currently running in P2, just almost, as you said, drivers almost like just maintaining their position at the moment, keeping it to themselves what they have, and get them to bring themselves home a nice P2. That could be the case. What about Luke Clayland then in P16? Maybe had a bit of an incident of themselves to the point with George now moving up into P4, but then that again would be a driver ahead. Tyrone into the pits now as well, as it stands there in P10. We'll see when do they come out and in what position that is going to be for them. That'll be very interesting to get it on as these two head into the final chicane now. That is going to be interesting to get on. Still just far away Lee is from George, and that is going to be a breathing space for George still on. Lee not really going for it at the moment. I think the patience game and really taking your car in position to the end of this race has kind of still already begun as it stands.
Well, this is about what we were saying with the pressure. I mean, look at this right now. You've got Ethan Lee on the back of George, and one thing that's made abundantly clear is that Lee is not going strictly for attacks. He's just looking to run clean and keep the gap about half a second, keep in proximity, because George is the one making mistakes. We saw him go a little bit too deep on to the first corner, but it's going to be about playing the long game here. Wait your opponent out. Basically time him out here. But it's the main strategy for a lot of drivers. Force your opponent into the mistake that their only option for recovery is going behind you. You can see even Ethan is not immune. He is making a bit of a mistake. But it will be a game of timing and a game of luck a little bit, because you have to hope that your pressure is going to make your opponent buckle.
Yeah, really all for that at the moment. To really get it on and get through what they can. 33 minutes still remain in the straight, and Lee really not being impatient at this moment, maybe just keeping a little bit of pressure still on George, maybe making that statement that I'm still behind you, and if you really make a mistake, I'm going to be through on you as it stands. But I think sure he knows that he's going to be there, and a problem could be up for George. Meanwhile, a little wide. There goes Vernon Higgs in P2 so far as it stands. 3.5 seconds to the lead as it stands. Both of them not yet pitting, but they're going to go, probably just run as long as they can, maybe put out an overcut on the likes of Tyron and all the others who tried to pit earlier than the top two.
You can see two more cars heading into the pits. This is going to be Glyn and Ryan. So Bury and Worley both now into the pit lane, and that will be their excursion into the lane done. It's going to be over half of the roster on the course now having taken a pit stop, and this is where we're going to see that transition point really start to kick in. You're going to see how effective the under or overcut is going to be in the hands of our drivers here on track. Now, I think that the undercut generally tends to be a more favourable strategy across the board. You get out ahead of the traffic, you get out into your own space of the course, and the time you make up is going to be invaluable. Like, take for example Tyrone. We're on board with him right now. He's got his own pocket of the course, he's relatively undisturbed, and is currently actually going to be running very good time here compared to some of the others on the course. You've still got Vernon Higgs and King into the pits as well, with Wrench remaining out at this stage. So it's still tough to call exactly how much time is being gained or lost. The real factor and the real decider is going to be when Wrench comes out, or when even Vernon Higgs and King come out of the pits. Where are they going to come out? How far away are they going to be from Tyrone? That is the benchmark to see if the undercut has worked in their favour, and we'll be having to monitor that very closely as George and Ethan are going to take our second and third spots on the field. See Stevie Mac also going to be jumping up into P4. Back on board with Ethan though, the proximity is really the key part here. It's, again, running as close as you can to spook your opponent. A little bit better on the chicanes this time for both sides. But now we're going to see Vernon Higgs and King come out of the pits. This is the dicey part of Zolder. This is what makes it such a questionable track for some. You can see where he comes out. Vernon Higgs is just going to be out right ahead of Farrier and onto the apex of turn 2. This is why some drivers get quite nervous, especially when you have these pit transitions. You've got to really watch out that pit lane.
Absolutely, with many cars and a lot, you expecting a car, and at this stage of the race where drivers are pitting every other lap, every time you go around there, you're expecting a car to be there. So you have to be careful, not only focus on the corner, but then also focus on not hitting that car maybe on that inside of that pit exit. It is quite close for them, as Vernon Higgs currently in P5 is all in the top 4. I don't think have pitted, so they need a pit stop. So as it stands, Vernon Higgs takes it for himself inside the top 5, as we now just have, we are over halfway through the mark of this race, but the pit stops completing over for many drivers, some of them still staying out. I think it's all going to be a game of strategy and really taking it to the end as they can. Maybe making a move if the opportunity arises. We see Gladwell going through. That's not Gladwell, that is Ryan Worley through on a blue flag just ahead of them is Glenn Burry, and another spin for John Welsh. He's not having a good race though. For a moment, he was inside the good top positions, but then again, mistakes keep coming, and as they are happening again and again, it's quite going against them. They're not quite having the race they would want. A lap down and in P17 so far.
I think if nothing else, that when it comes to this stage of the race, you've really got to decide where you want to plant your car. Barrier and King into the pits, that's going to mean the last few cars out on track 5 remain. Gladwell and then the top 4 yet to pit in at this stage. But this is where you're going to decide where you want to place your car. Now, if I was, for example, George or Ethan, I'm going to be wanting to keep this fight going because chances of catching up to some of the others are very slim, and you're in close enough striking distance to where the fight is worth it. But for some, like you were saying earlier, John Welsh has not had the strongest race today. He has had a couple of issues on the course and is currently multiple laps down. It's about sometimes just cutting your losses. He had the stop and go penalty that he had to clear. We've also had the number 23 car. That is going to be James King actually having the stop and go rather than a full core pit stop. So he's actually already taken his pit stop but had to clear the pen. The question really is, are you going to cut your losses or are you going to push forward? Now, if I was Welsh here, I'd just focus on finishing the race. Doesn't matter where I place. The important thing is you finish, because that's still going to be a race finish in your pocket, and that will serve you well. Take count back. If you get equal points with someone, then that might play a factor in count back when it comes to your position being decided. But here's George and Lee both going into the pits now simultaneously. They're keeping that fire ignited all the way through. You can even see Lee is getting very close to the back of George. I think it was trying to get past before the pit limiter had to kick in.
Yeah, he was really not backing out at all. Even in the pit lane entry, he was trying to get through before the pit limiter could limit their speed. He was just not. He was there to make that move, and that shows that he's really now on it to be making that move. And as soon as they're outside the box, it'll be very exciting to see how they go around, because I'm sure if Lee maybe stayed behind George for a while now, for many laps, but he might not stay for behind him anymore after the pit stops are done, because he was really on his way to play the tricks, and I think the tricks and the mind games might just be starting and beginning with 25 minutes to go. These guys are out there with Glyn now in P6, along with Mark Gladwell in P9, as it stands just ahead of King, who's far away from him on the track, as Gladwell, car number 80, just going through them on the cockpit view to see how good they are navigating through these corners. What about this right-hander that they're going to be through up into the straight now to get that final hairpin before the final chicane around here in this race? And definitely we've done 23 laps, and many more will be done around here by these drivers, and the fights and the games would be on as we have Wrench now into the pits as well from the lead of the race, along with Gladwell into the pit lane for the pit stop.
Gladwell's the last driver to head into the pits at this point, so everyone has taken a pit stop, and with that, unless there's any major issues, I don't think we'll see anyone else in there, and the pit window will close. I was going to say that Gladwell was in actually quite an awkward spot. He may be P9 on the books, but having yet to take a pit stop, he is going to have to pit in, and he then will emerge right out into traffic at the back end of the field. So he's going to have to contend with that when he eventually re-emerges. But that's the number 80 Lexus into the pit, and with that, the field is fully spaced and fully out of pit stops needed. Tyrone is the closest to another car, and he's actually right on the back of George. Curiously, Mr. Lee has actually leapfrogged George in the pits, so whether that was a faster stop, looks like he got a 4-second faster stop, and that has paid dividends, as he's currently got not only the position on George, but he's actually got a back marker splitting the two. That's going to be the number 13 of Craig Lua, actually proving to be the roadblock between these two cars. So George has got even more on his hands. Not only will he have to fight Ethan Lee eventually when he gets round to it, but he's also going to have to get past Lua in a good time frame. A well-timed overtake is going to be no effect on your position, but get the timing wrong, meet him at the wrong point of the track, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to lose easily 1 to 2 seconds.
Yeah, really, and we see, I mean, the pit lane already into the pit entry, how eager Lee was to overtake George, and we could see that already. Meanwhile, we could see one more thing, and that is Tyron on the back of on the back of George there, and he's really on his way to almost overtake for a moment there, but he stays behind as it stands. Maybe what is Tyron looking for in this race? I mean, does he want to overtake George and focus on the top 3 already, fight for it, or does he think that maybe he stays in P5 for time being, and as the time trumbles down and comes to the end, he settles down for a P4 for himself as it stands? We're looking at that, so the back markers there, George is going to have to make his way through that now as the blue flags have been rolled around. But is Lua going to let through these guys get out of their way? Not so far though. Into turn 1, the blue flags have been waved. He needs to get out of the way, but as it stands, he isn't quite doing that. And Tyron now on the back of George is going to be even more, and a lot of pressure on the hands of George to not only defend that, but is he going to be able to do that? He might not be. Already on the worst to be losing that position, but just enough for George to defend and stay ahead of Tyron. As it stands, the blue flags are being waved, but Lua is not going to slow down to lose time to let these guys through and into the chicane. They go, they make contact, and again, this is the same chicane, if I'm not mistaken, that George dive bombed, and to gain a position, they make again a contact. This time it was a lot cleaner, but a little bit touchings are on between the two, and definitely George isn't going to give this one up without a fight, without a doubt, that's for sure.
Now, this is an example of actually a really good defense by George. You can see he didn't move erratically, he didn't try to drastically change his line. He just made his intentions clear where he was going to place his car, but in such a way where Tyrone couldn't really stay alongside, at least not for long. You can see briefly peeks the nose to the right side as they went into that first chicane. Wasn't able to keep it there because George had the ideal line through the chicane that cut both the apexes. And unless you are side by side, you're not entitled to the space. You've got to be significantly alongside. So your front axle has to be significantly ahead of the rear axle of the next car to be entitled to the space. And he was not quite there. He was just sort of knocking on the door, but it wasn't enough to be warranted the yield. And so George is currently holding firm. They both got past. That is Lua just in the background. They both got past relatively fine. There was worries of a roadblock, but both of them were relatively uninhibited. And now Tyrone is the one on the chase. Going to be peeking it to the left. Tyrone's going quite aggressive here to try and get as much pressure mounted as quickly as possible, as we are 20 minutes out from the end of the race. We're coming into that closing segment now, so he knows that he's going to be running out of opportunities. He's got about, I'd say, I want to say about 10 to 12 laps here, really, of fighting, because there will be an element of locking in your position towards the end. So how much he wants to fight is up for debate. But yeah, about 10 laps, I'd say, real fighting left to go. So he's going to quickly run out of chances if he's not careful.
Yeah, really will be, and he's already on it though this time around on the inside once again into the final chicane, but just not enough for him though. But does he go though, as George goes very wide now into the just on the entry exit of the chicane, and that's going to be very lucky for Tyrone. There is going to be through on George though, but is it going to be enough? Is he going to make the move stick though, because he's really weaving around on the main straight to be defending that position, and he's already through. And definitely, as you said, that he was quite aggressive on making the move, and I'm sure with that definitely suggests that he's not gonna just opt for P4 and maybe try his luck and try the speed that he's got to go on into to challenge for the top 3 in this race. Meanwhile, Ethan is in P5, just ahead of Glyn and behind George as it stands. Ethan has now lost out the position That is interesting to know because if I'm not mistaken, after the pit stops, Lee was ahead of George and Tyron there.
Well, that's actually the chain of events. So you saw the plume of smoke on the final chicane. Lee lost the car in the final chicane, and I think that's part of what threw George off, taking evasive action, which opened the door for Tyrone to take the move and get himself up into P3. So, again, chain of events. One thing can very quickly lead to another. A completely unrelated event can put you back in the fight. We see that here with Tyrone. He was able to jump on the opportunity afforded by another driver's mistake and now currently stands in P3. I don't think he's going to be going into further, although he is going to be going into the pit lane once again. I wonder if there was a stop and go penalty levied against him, because I don't see a reason for him to go back. He's already taken a pit stop.
Yeah, not at all. I think no reason for him to go in there unless, as you said, there's a penalty, a stop and go, or anything else that's going to be beneficial for him to pit before the end of the pit lane. But as it stands, he's on the end of his pit box, and is he going to pit in though? That'll be an interesting thing to see. And yes, he will. As it stands, he's stopped at his pit box and a pit box and another pit stop for him there. That is an interesting thing to know. Not quite sure what exactly happened there for him.
Looks like he actually missed his pit box. He overshot it slightly and had to reverse back there. I think he's doing a bit of a splash and dash. Actually, no. That is a correction on my part. It was, in fact, a stop and go penalty. So he had to stop in his pit box on the right designated spot and then come back out again. So he's now going to be down in P8. That was to remove the stop and go penalty. The drive-through is cleared on lap, or just in time to get to lap 28, and that is going to drop him all the way back down, and he's going to have to now fight his way back up again. So he's on the back of Stevie Mac and will be under significant, and oh, saying that, contact made. That is going to be on, I think, the back Tyrone. A little bit too much there as Wally just ahead. And oh no, it's more chaos there as there's a rough rejoin. Let's take a bit of a replay on that and see from the helicopter exactly what happened. So jumping on board with Stevie Mac here. This is the live replay of what occurred. Trying to catch up to the back of this thing. Wally just up ahead. Mac on the brakes. Tyrone comes in hot, and yep, that is a classic. Unfortunately, just one thing led to another. We also had the follow-up incident, so we're going to see that too. So coming up again off the back of Stevie Mac, just making contact with Tyrone. Tries to spin it round. Tyrone will get back in, but then, yeah, very sharp rejoin, and that is what is going to make serious contact with James King. The rejoins, we've had a couple of unsafe rejoins at this point. I wonder if that's going to be flagged up in incident reporting.
Yeah, I mean, the possibility of it, because definitely we saw many rejoins that have caused even probably more of a chaos than the incident itself was. Because even in this one, for example, there was a spin. One car trying to move on as they get their way, but as soon as the rejoin from Mac he almost took over King there was, I believe, if not mistaken there. So that is definitely going to be a thing. He's going to be looked at and called up by the drivers, that's for sure. As we have Kelly in P16 just behind Steele as it stands. Steele's going to try and defend his position for the moment in that Ferrari. The Bentley stays behind in P16 as we have 17 cars now running in this race so far.
Yeah, we did lose another driver, so down to 17 racers on the field. And a bit of a roundup, and oh, Simon Kelly going very hot there. That was a full-on send. And Kelly is going to get the position, but not in the cleanest manner. So he's up into P15 now. Matt Steele is going to be taking quite the position here, and you can see he's struggling with that car. I wonder if he has got any damage that is lasting from that altercation. Ethan Lee is going to be on the recovery drive now, and onto the back of a long-fated rival. George is up ahead in B3. I didn't think that this fight would be reignited, but here we are, 14 minutes to go, and it looks like BMW dueling is back on the menu.
It really is. These guys fall all the way before the pit stops, and they are back at it once again. And it was more like Lee's mistake, forcing both of them to be closer one more time. But sure, that is going to be not a problem for Lee to be really back at the back. I mean, he was ahead of George, so a good thing for Lee that he's still around and a possibility. And the fight for P3 is on. And as you said, that many incidents have been happening. Maybe drivers just not being able to judge going into the chicane, especially. We saw many incidents happening at that part of the track, as some braking early, then the others braking very late. That then ends up being the thing. Meanwhile, this fight for P3 is on as it stands, and George so far leads it on and keeps his P3, the podium place, to himself. But Lee is not going to back out, and he's really going to give it all to the end of this race, and he's going to apply all the tactics he can to really get this position, just like we saw him on the pit lane entry. And I'm sure he's going to be thinking a lot about that, to how to gain this position in the remaining 12 minutes of this race, as we are just about to the very end of this race now.
Yeah, so coming into those final 10 minutes, it's very soon going to be a big judgment call as to who is going to come out on top. And in this battle in particular, will be a big sweep. And oh, see Ethan Lee onto the side of George and going for the attack on the outside of the corner this time. It's not going to be a successful move, but it is enough to get under George's skin, and now he's going to continue that onslaught of moves. He pokes the nose in to the apex. I think a little bit too optimistic there. I think George kind of anticipated that one coming. Has had a much better exit out of the chicane as a result. It's going to be a very strong fight between the two, but right now will be a real little back and forth. I wonder how this is going to be handled by Ethan Lee. He cannot let this go to his head. It's very easy during a on-track battle to let the tension get to you, to let the fight happen, and ultimately to result in, well, a bit of an altercation. Things get too heated, things get too raucous, and you have one car that's facing the wrong way by the end. So Lee, I think, just needs to, yes, stay close, but pick his timings. He can't fire it alongside and expect to get out the move so easily. Like we said earlier, some drivers are getting the elbows out, and there is a good and a bad time to do so. So Lee, pick your timings, hold your line, and then we'll see what he can do here. Goes to the left side this time of George. Going to get a little bit later on the brakes, and there you go. That was a good attack right there. Successful or not, he committed to his line. He's put on the pressure. No contact made. A solid attacking move. Even if it didn't stick, that's what we want to see. That's what we know Lee can bring to the table. We'll see these two fight more and more, especially as the final 10 minutes are now upon us.
Yeah, really. I mean, that fight is already igniting at the best, as we said. As you said, you know, we could have one car facing the other way if something goes wrong for them. So they definitely need to know, you know, not only fight for P3, but at least keep P4 as well for Lee, or in George's case, you know, just not finishing would hurt a lot more than maybe finishing a position down than they wish to do it as it stands. But I'm sure the fight will be on, with Kelly currently in P14, and just ahead of three drivers, Gladwell, Steele, and Davidson at the back. Meanwhile, Gladwell is at the back, just 1.4 seconds separating these two. So definitely one fight is at the top, the other is at the bottom. The drivers within just 1.5 seconds of one another, with Matt Farrier as it stands. And there is a spin, and that is Matt Farrier indeed. Currently in P10, he's on the way. He's going to lose out another position, maybe, unless there was a lapped car. But Matt Farrier spinning, and that specific place, we've seen many cars spin around, and with these drivers have been around this circuit for over 32 laps, but still not able to judge a perfect moment to go around the lap every single time. Still, the troubles of Zolder are on their sleeve, and really struggling to keep it on track for some of them there.
Well, Zolder is, I'd argue, one of the most difficult tracks when it comes to chicanes. It's so difficult to judge. Even the best drivers will get it wrong often. So I'm certainly not placing it squarely on the drivers. I think it is just as much a challenging track, and it can catch even the fastest racers off guard, especially if you're trying to judge how the car will behave when you lift two wheels sometimes into the air and then try to get your platform stable again. We see Gladwell on the back of Kelly. He did have to take a drive through and is going to be sat just behind by about half a second now. I'd actually be quite wary if I was the Lexus here, because we have seen time and time again Kelly does get those elbows out when going for moves and when defending for moves respectively. We'll have to wait and find out how this is going to play, but with those final 10 minutes looming, I wonder if Gladwell is actually going to go for the move at all, or just, like we said earlier, cut losses and stick to P15, a strong P15 finish.
Yeah, I mean, he's on the way and he's got it. I mean, if 1.1 second now the gap as it stands, so if he really wants to go for it, I mean, now would be the time for him to push. Or if he thinks that he's just going to stay in there and take out a position of a race finish for himself. Meanwhile, this battle still stays on with Ethan and George on their way to be fighting to the end of it, and I'm sure these two are going to give it everything to the last lap and to the last corner of this race as it stands. Meanwhile, this little one between Matt Farrier and George Polsland could be on to the end as well. Meanwhile, Farrier had a moment and that allowed Polsland probably to get closer to Matt Farrier. Matt didn't lose the position from where he spun off in P10 if I'm not mistaken, but still a power and a opportunity to Polsland it gave for him to be fighting, and definitely the 10th place is up for grabs for Polsland as well if he gets it right, maybe. But is that going to be enough? I mean, with just 6.5 minutes to go, we'll see if it's enough or not. He will have to get his elbows out if he's on his if he wants to be making that move and get into the top 10 of this race though. But let's see how it's going to be happening. The gap as it stands is less than a second.
Less than a second remains between Palsland and Farrier, and Palsland getting a much better chicane on the BMW is going to stage a potential attack. Oh, looks like that got a little bit dicey there. I can't tell if that was actually contact between the two. Let's jump in with the helicopter and see exactly what happened. So bird's eye view, and we will see much more clearly what happened between them. So Farrier and Palsland, better chicane from the McLaren. Comes in a little bit hotter than the BMW, and yep, contact confirmed. That was contact made, but look at that, good sportsmanship being shown. Palsland doesn't take advantage of that mistake that he made. Keeps Farrier ahead. So major respect points gained there in my camp. Palsland has now got the move legitimately on grounds, as he has got a much better exit out the final chicane heading into lap 34. But very good sportsmanship being shown there, and that's what we want to pride above all else. Just good, honest racing, and if you accidentally tap, then say, let them go, let them retain their position, and sort of adjudicate it yourselves as an honourable thing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it didn't do anything bad to Polsland at all. I mean, he's now again on the way to be fighting for that. Meanwhile, he goes very wide. Farrier goes a little bit wide on that gravel, and he's going to be there. And Polsland is going to have his chance to be overtaking around the outside into the chicane. Now they go, and this time around, he's going to go very wide. He's going to run wide this time around, and it's going to be him having to give up that position. He's not going to give up that position this time around, though. But or is he going to be giving that position? Meanwhile, there's a car behind on the way to be lapping these guys, but George Polsland still keeps up P10 to himself and stays ahead of Matt Farrier. Meanwhile, Ryan Worley is behind these guys and on the way to be lapping both of them, and we're going to see Farrier getting out of the way, but or is he going to get out of the way, almost racing him there and not letting him, not having it easy on him, and Polsland is going to be finding it quite nicely done for himself to be not only taking that move, but then that car of Ryan Worley on in between the two as well. That's going to be some ease off pressure for Polsland, with not only a lot to go in this race with just about 4 minutes to go, but is it going to be enough though? He braked. He had to break off maybe to let the lapping car through, and that again has allowed Matt Farrier to be very close to Polsland, and a chance for an overtake is still on. And these three are there, these two are there as well, and Lee has went through on the inside line and made that move on George, and the overtake for Lee is on, and the position P3 is into Lee's hands. And along with that, we see many cars spin around there. There's more than one, that's 2 cars.
Absolute chaos has erupted in this last 5 minutes. Let's take a quick look at that one more time, as we had multiple cars get involved there. Matt Steele, Peter Davidson, I say Simon Kelly also having an incident later, but look at that. You can just see that is going to start with Ethan Lee, as well as I think that was Davidson going very wide there. Contact barely brushed up. I think our tracking literally internally could not keep up with everything that just occurred there. That was in the space of about 20 seconds, and we have had 15 internal events generated, by the way, without going too much into the technicals. That is, I think, the fastest that I've ever seen stuff proc up on my screen. Simon Kelly has had an off and has gone into the infield and is now actually sort of stuck in the middle of the track. Can't really get out of there, has to reverse on to the racing surface while staying out of the way of other cars. But yet Kelly is going to be sort of limping themselves back onto the course, and now it's going to be those final couple of minutes. So really, we are looking at 2 laps remaining now, and up to the top, Wrench with Vernon Higgs is going to be remaining in P1 and 2, looking to be that way to the end of the race. But the big question mark is going to stand between George and Ethan, as they are really 2 drivers who have fought tooth and nail the entire race.
Yeah, they really have, and it's still going on. It hasn't ended. It depends, though. Does George want to go for that P3 still, or does he think with just a minute and a half to go in this race, he wants to stay out for P4? But I mean, if he wants to go for the move, elbows would be out for both of them. But as it stands, Lee might be gaining a bit on George as it stands lap by lap. So definitely Lee maybe just saving that little speed and getting that little free air is going to help him go to the end a little bit faster than the driver behind, who earlier was out there. Meanwhile, Glenn is back into the top 5. Let's not ignore that. How much of a chaotic race he had, and he's back into the top 5. A very good recovery for him as well. I don't think there's enough laps left now with less than a minute for him to attack any of these cars ahead, but a very awesome recovery for him as it stands. P5, not bad after what happened for him.
Yeah, roller coaster to say the least when it comes to today's race, and certainly a win today for Glyn, as after all of that, they've managed to recover their way up into P5. Crucially, they're ahead of Tyrone by 2 positions, and that is going to be a big deal considering their 8-point gap in the championship thus far. They've got a lot of work to do if they want to retain that momentum and potentially take the lead of the championship. But for Tyrone today, this one has been a bit of a miss. Remember, they did have the drive-thrus and they did have the sort of initial chaos that erupted on the circuit. But we do have a drive-through cleared for the number 821. That's Simon Kelly. They are down in P16. Then as well as that, Peter Davidson down in 17. This today was absolutely brutal for Davidson. Remember where they started, right up at the top on the sharp end, and they've been thoroughly dropped down. Today's race really just has not gone their way. Sad to see, but they were fighting the good fights all the way through to the very end. One driver though stands tall as they come up to lap 39 finish, and the final chicane here. David Wrench, take a bow. Number 1 on the side plate, number 1 on the track. Zolder is conquered by the McLaren, and he crosses the line to win round 3 of the UKAF ACC Championship. Solid result, excellent driving. Into P2, they're not too far behind. It's another McLaren as Bailey Vernon Higgs comes to cross that checkered flag and do so in style. The number 50 taking this home. Running up to the line though, final pushes. It's going to be a close fought run here, but the BMW in black and green is going to be leading your queue as we have 3 cars crossing the line in close succession. Ethan Lee in the number 63 BMW takes 3rd place on the track. George is going to be 4th in the number 98, and then Glenn Berry with a miraculous recovery after flying up and down the order like a yo-yo into P5. Ryan Worley is going to be soon coming up to the line, but they will be in P6 in the number 30, with Tyrone having crossed the finish line in P7. James King, having already crossed the line, is in P8, with Stevie Mack into the pit lane now. George Powsland coming up to the finish in P10, as the last couple of drivers are crossing over that finish line. Farrier in P11, just behind, with Craig Lua in P12, and celebrating in due course. That will be a hearty result for many, as we're going to check in with all the drivers now. Cleland in 13th, Gladwell in 14th, 15th going to Matt Steele, Simon Kelly in P16, and then we had the last few drivers on the order. We didn't get to exactly check in with everyone, but I'll say that was a race and a half right till the very end there. I'm actually going to have to play a bit of catch up myself, because I'm sure there were moments that we missed. It's too much going on.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of, the challenge of Zolder, we really saw today, really getting to the drivers, and I think really it showed how difficult it was to even. It says for us to appreciate these drivers, how good you have to be to really nail this circuit. Complete a whole race around here, and really on top of that, really go wheel to wheel, side by side, and give us all the action that we've seen. Overall, absolutely, fantastic. Great race.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, yeah, don't want to go anywhere, folks, because in round 4, we have a return to UK soil. It's Brands Hatch. It's a track that has a very strong place in my heart, and one that I'm very much looking forward to. So we will be joining you next week for that, of course. Thank you to everyone who has joined us, be that on track, be that off track, in live chats or wherever else. Thank you, as always. And we're looking forward to seeing you on the broadcast next week out. Same time, same place. You know where to find us, and we'll see you then. But from both of us in the commentary box and from everyone here at RAF Esports, we want to thank you for watching, for participating, and we will see you next time. Next week, Brands Hatch, round 4, championship, about to heat up. But for now, goodbye.